Good afternoon. Good afternoon. For the record, today is September 27th, 2023. The time is 2:04 p.m. This is a meeting of the Public Service Commission of the District of Columbia being held in the Commission Room located at 1325 G Street Northwest, Suite 800. I'm Emil C. Thompson, Chairman of the Public Service Commission. Seated to my right is Commissioner Richard Beverly, and to my left is Commissioner Ted Trabu. Pursuant to the Open Meeting Act, the Commission scheduled this meeting to consider formal case matters that require Commission action. The proposed agenda for this meeting was posted on Monday, September 25th, 2023. A recording of today's open meeting will be available on the Commission's website after the meeting concludes. Commissioners Beverly and Trabu, are you prepared to vote and adopt the agenda?
Yes.
Yes.
All in favor of adopting the agenda, please indicate by stating yes.
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 And I vote yes. The agenda is adopted. Today, there are 3 action items before the Commission. The matters are: 1, formal case number 1167 in the matter of the implementation of the Climate Business Plan. This order grants charge points, motion to withdraw, intervention. Number 2, formal case number 1171 in the matter of the investigation into community renewable energy facility practices in the district and GD 2022-01-E in the matter of the complaint and petition for the investigation into Potomac Electric Power Company's community renewable energy facility practices. This order denies Pepco's motion for enlargement of time to provide additional optionality for meter removal solutions that relies on the CREF owners to provide data in a spreadsheet format to Pepco as statutorily non-compliant. The order also accepts Chess's proposal as an interim solution and directs Pepco to request access from the CREF owner to the cellular or wireless connection on CREF meters to obtain the production data. And number 3, electric tariff 2022-05 in the matter of the Potomac Electric Power Company's multi-dwelling unit plug-in vehicle tariff rate. This order, among other things, approves Pepco's multi-dwelling unit MDU plug-in vehicle PIV tariff rate as modified and directs Pepco to refile the tariff and to file a semi-annual report for the next 2 years on the MDU-PIV tariff rate as outlined in this order. All in favor of approving the recommended orders, please indicate by stating yes.
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 And I vote yes. The orders are approved. The next regular open meeting will be held on October 4th, 2023 at 2 p.m. The proposed agenda for the meeting will be posted at least 48 hours before the announced meeting. Pursuant to merger commitment number 51, informal case 1119, Pepco is required to annually offer to appear publicly before the Commission to review and provide documentation concerning Pepco's reliability, safety, and customer service performance, and to answer questions about Pepco's performance in the District of Columbia. This has become known as Pepco's State of the Company. At this time, the Commission will now hear from Pepco on the state of their company. Please come forward.
Okay. Chairman, can you hear me? Am I coming through clear?
Is there a way we can turn him up just a little bit louder? Okay.
Okay. I can lean forward if that helps. Let me
Yeah,
try.
I think they're going to turn you up in the back as well, so we should be.
Sounds good. Okay. All right. Well, good afternoon. My name's Tyler Anthony. I'm currently the president and CEO for Pepco Holdings. And I wanted to thank the commission for the time today to come and address the commission about the yearly performance for Pepco Holdings. What I'd like to do is I'm going to cover a little bit of the background, Pepco Holdings, a little bit of the background. I'm going to talk a little about the highlights of our results. I'm going to spend a little time talking about our vision and our current focus areas going forward into the next year. And I'm also joined today by Valencia and Rodney, who are going to add some additional commentary after I'm done speaking, and then we can open up for questions as the commission warrants. Okay, and then from a remote clicker, you guys are doing it. Okay, we'll go to the next slide. One more. Okay, what I thought I would do was start with an overview of Pepco Holdings. Just as a refresher, you can get a sense here. This is the Exelon family of companies. And I know the commission's familiar with the fact that a little over a year ago, Exelon divested all of its T&D company, and it's essentially the largest in North America. And this slide just gives a rendition of that. Now, the utilities that myself and the team are responsible for at the top of the slide here, Pepco, Delmarva Power, and Atlantic City Electric. And essentially, we're 4,500 employees taking care of 10,000 square miles of area. And what I think of interest to the commission would be the fact that, we support whether it's suburban, rural, urban, coastal, and we serve in states of New Jersey, Maryland, Delaware, and the District of Columbia. And the aggregate of that is a very charged environment about each jurisdiction setting aggressive carbon reduction goals. It's very similar here to the District of Columbia. Interesting point of note of our broad footprint is the fact that Governor Murphy just recently approved 12,000 megawatts of offshore wind in the state of New Jersey. Governor Moore in the state of Maryland has just passed through council the 8,500 megawatts of offshore wind power to be brought in. And I kind of share this to kind of set the environment of a very charged energy transition that's in and around us, including here in the District of Columbia. Now, if you go to the next slide, I mentioned that, we're part of that Exelon family of companies. And the fact that Exelon has divested from its generation portfolio, now we have a opportunity where Calvin, I'm a direct report to Calvin Butler, the CEO of Exelon, and we have the benefit of working in a large level of autonomy that I'm given to make decisions and run the company here in the district as it pertains to Pepco Holdings. And what the other benefit we have being a part of the Exelon family of company, I'll give the commission a couple examples where one of the benefits we have of being a broader network of utilities is the fact that we have tiered indicators that show the performance in different areas and aspects of the business that we compare across utilities. We have management systems and peer groups that drive that performance across all the utilities, essentially raising the performance for all of us. Okay. In addition to that, items like storm support. We all agree the impacts of climate change are real and significant, what we're seeing with these weather patterns. And I also have the benefit of the sister companies to get resources here to the district as needed. And we've done that several times this year, and we continue to gain that support from them. In addition to that, I'll talk about resources. The commission's familiar with our Racial Equity Capital Fund. That idea was stemmed here with the Washington Interfaith Network Group. And because we're a part of that Exelon family of companies, we were able to secure the necessary resources to make that funding occur and happen, which I also think is noteworthy. We'll go to the next slide. Now, moving forward to a little bit about the, one more slide, please. We'll go one more. Okay, talk a little bit about, I'll move now a little bit more local to the District of Columbia. This slide kind of lays out some of the different items that we're working on. Rodney and Valencia will go a little deeper into this. But what I wanted to kind of start with is the fact that we see ourselves as a big economic engine here in the District of Columbia. We essentially, we think of it as an honor and a privilege to serve the 300,000+ customers here in the district. And whether it's jobs, educational resources, funding, critical work from nonprofits that we support, We see ourselves as a viable asset to the community, and we take that responsibility very seriously. You can get into some of the different items here on the slide, but I would share, I came here in 2016 from Chicago. I came here as a function of the mergers. I've been here since 16. I had the role of chief operations officer and then most recently CEO. And what I would say is our focus has been very outcome based. And what I mean by that is I'll give some anecdotal examples about being good community partners. We worked with the mayor, and we worked on the creation of the district's infrastructure academy. I'm pleased to report to the commission we've had 235 graduates from that program. All have secured careers in the utility industry, and our most recent class of 22 is in that job interview process as we speak. When you look at the different work we've done with HBCUs, I've gotten to know President Mason personally. We've had him out at our control centers. We're working with at a significant level, not just around resources, but how we're partnering with our local academia to make it better for the communities. One program that we're working on right now is an opportunity to create a 2-year program with UDC, where individuals that graduate from there will go right into our control center operations positions. Okay, and another recent item, we just had our first graduating class. Now, the traditional workforce development we're doing with the district on the infrastructure academy has been more about core field jobs, overhead, underground, meters, et cetera. But most recently, we kicked off a partnership with the Walter Reed IT Infrastructure Academy that we just had our first graduating class in. And this is basically on IT security development for students from under-resourced areas, where we're bringing them into the IT industry for cybersecurity positions. And we just had our first graduating class there as well. And then I mentioned the Racial Equity Capital Fund. We're going to make an announcement on Friday about what this fund is. When I had met with the Washington Interfaith Network, a bunch of us had met with them. They said one of the biggest impediments to diverse businesses is access to capital. And you fast forward 2 years later, I mentioned we had the resources through Exelon to create the fund. We're going to be announcing $2.7 million of awards to 3 businesses here in the district that are starting up, as well as one in Maryland within the Pepco territory. Okay, so the headline here is outcome-based, results-oriented, making an impact that's significant. And I'll close with the headline. It's always been of the commission of the district's priorities about working with local and diverse businesses. I'm pleased to report, as of 2022, closing last year, 43 cents of every dollar we spent was with a diverse and local company. For us, that comes out to about a $342 million worth of spend. 43 cents of every dollar we spend is going to a diverse or a local company here in the district. Okay, we'll go to the next slide. I thought it pertinent to kind of talk a little bit about the team. I mentioned the benefits, having the benefits of working with the parent company Exelon and the benefits that I have, but yet I have the autonomy. This is the team that we have here. This is the senior leadership team at Pepco Holdings. And the reason I kind of share this is, for example, Tamla Olivier took over for me a little over a year ago as Chief Operations Officer. She came to us from CEO of Constellation Home. She was the Chief Customer Officer at BG&E. She's been a great add to the team. Phil's been with us for 5 years as the Chief Financial Officer. He's been the one that's been instrumental in the inner workings of the capital fund I had mentioned. Moreland Belazar, our Chief Customer Officer. In my opinion, there's no one better in the business than her when it comes to customer, when it comes to affordability, when it comes to what we're trying to do now with what we have with individuals and the difficulties to pay their bills, et cetera. Moreland is expert at that and trying to make the necessary connections between what the needs are and what the outcomes can be with things like LIHEAP, et cetera. And then Rodney, who you'll hear about a little bit past me, is the fact that getting Rodney here as the Senior Vice President of Governmental and External Affairs. He's got 20 years of field experience, and he combines that with the government and regulatory and stakeholder side. One of the things that Rodney has always been about intentional about the inner workings of For example, HBCUs is not just about resources. It's about how you're tying into the university. What are we trying to do in order to enable the benefits of that? How do we get those students to be to come to Pepco, and how do we just continue to grow our workforce through the different aspects? But you'll hear from Rodney. But as you get to know him over time, once again, I think I have one of the best teams in the country. All right, now if we go to the next slide, and I'll kind of continue with my outcome-based summary, where this is just a metrics. The color codes represent quartile performance in the United States. You know, when I came here in 2016, we had made 729 commitments for Pepco and the commission in support of the merger with Exelon. We made 729 commitments. I'm pleased to report that 697 of those commitments are closed and completed. We have the remaining 32, and they're all on track. Today is one of those commitments to come in front of you and discuss how our performance was for the year. And what I'm most proud of, when you kind of take a look at the numbers here, and I say this more for the men and women that are behind myself and the team here, is that, you know, we've improved to the best ever performance again in reliability in 2022. And I believe I speak for many of us. You often hear about Pepco's improved reliability. You hear it at barbecues. You hear it through different businesses. You hear that most people can't even remember the last time they had an outage. And then what we try to do when we do have outages, we try to respond with significant presence, good communications, and fast restoration times. You know, we've been able to drive the reliability of the electric system in the District of Columbia to top decile in the United States. That's the top 10% of all utilities in the United States. That's where our performance is currently in the district. And I don't say that to boast. I say it more for the men and women that are behind me, because this is the nation's capital, and that's where performance should be. Okay? In addition, you know, I won't get into it, but whether you look at safety, customer sat numbers, all the different anecdotes, we've had a good run here since 2016, and we plan to continue that in service to the district. Okay? We'll go to the next slide. And as I move to, you know, kind of start to close out, when I first made CEO, I said, you know, so what are we going to stand for? So I took my team, this is a little over a year ago, and said, what's important to us going forward? You know, I mentioned affordability. You know, we get into this energy transition, we have to think about how we do it equitably and how we do it affordably. And what I'm going to cover here is the 4 pillars of our strategy house that the team and I kind of operate Pepco to on a daily basis. And I'll start on those 4 pillars at the bottom. First, enabling solutions to climate change. You know, I'm starting to think that we're fastly becoming a technology company that supplies electricity versus an electricity company. Okay, what I mean by that is whether it's, you know, the Solar for All program here in the district, which I think is one of the best in the country, what we've done for low income, whether it's the EV penetration, DERs. I'll give a quick stat to the commission on distributed energy resources. Right now, across our 3 operating companies, we're well over 100,000 homes with installed rooftop solar. We're averaging about 10,000 applications a year between the utilities that we're responsible for. We're getting about a 70% install rate on those applications. And this year, it looks like we're on track to have 12,000 applications for rooftop solar. Okay, but what are we doing to help the district, to assist the commission, to be a partner on helping them reach their carbon reduction goals? Because we all know what the effects of that are and how important it is. Call that the first pillar. The second pillar, enhancing grid performance. You know, I mentioned that performance that we've had, and I'll just say that our ability to keep that level of performance. If you fast forward a few years from now, when the transportation industry is also on this grid, just that more and more reliance on the grid and the importance of its performance. As we think about building electrification and where we're going in the district building electrification, what I would say is we have the responsibility to make sure that the grid is ready, to make sure the grid is resilient, and it can handle where we're trying to go as we go through the energy transition. So first one, how do we meet the carbon reduction goals? Second one, this level of excellence. You know, Rodney has often said we won't We won't apologize for maintaining our level of excellence in everything we do, okay? Then I'll move over to the third one, which is frankly the most important to me, because this is who we are. This is about equity and it's about the responsibility. As the commission sees our different filings, we spend a lot of time outside of this room talking about the underserved, talking about where we can influence, what we can do, where can we be more supportive to the communities, and how do we have even more impact. I'll give you an example of that. I was at the last graduation of the Infrastructure Academy, and I was talking to the local IBEW leadership here in the district, and he talked about how we could take the academy, continue to grow it, and even start to place even further individuals at Virginia Power and other places. And I just keep thinking about it as a force multiplier of how we continue to challenge ourselves to do more and more. That's the third one. And then finally, delivering a superior customer experience. You know, we fastly kind of got the grid now at a good place that we need to continue our level of excellence. But this one here is, I'll summarize it to the commission this way. There's no decision that I will make that will not have two considerations. The considerations are, what is the customer benefit and what is the affordability model, okay? And as I talked about affordability being one of my bigger concerns going forward, is we've looked at affordability all encompassing about how do we affect it and what can we do to maintain the energy transition, lower on the carbon, but how do we keep this as an affordable way? And basically we have 4 tenets that we continually look at on affordability: energy supply, energy service. This is things like the federal and local grants that we've been applying for and we're partnering with you on. So energy supply, on service, on customers. This is our energy efficiency programs, our Solar for All programs, and then lastly, on the utility bill. This is on rate design, our ability to get to bill support, et cetera. And you'll see that we're constantly thinking about that in all of our filings, whether it's been in our filings with the commission as it pertains to carbon reduction, even our most recent ones, you'll see we pay particular attention to that in those filings. Okay, so in closing, I just want to say, you know, I've been here since 16. It's been an honor to serve the District of Columbia and the residents here. We take it very seriously. I'm very pleased to report whether it's been the reliability, our focus on community, workforce development. I'd like to think the results are pretty, somewhat stand for themselves. And we look forward to the challenges ahead of us. We know they're significant. We know these weather patterns are causing a lot of problems. We know where we want to go with carbon reduction, and we know we want to take care of and continue to work on our underserved communities. And just as, once again, it's just an honor to address you guys today. Okay, so with that, I'll turn it over to Rodney.
Thank you, Mr. Anthony.
Good afternoon. Thank you, Chair Thompson, Commissioner Beverly, and Commissioner Trabue for an opportunity to share with you the great work we're doing at Pepco Holdings and quite frankly speaking, Pepco here in the District of Columbia. As stated previously, I am Rodney Odoye, the Senior Vice President of Governmental, Regulatory, and External Affairs for Pepco Holdings. Just a long way of saying I have the daily responsibility of managing all the companies, the 3 companies' external interfaces. So the commission here is one of my responsibilities that I'm responsible for, excuse me, at the macro level. To pick up where Tyler left off, I wanted to give you a little bit more insight into how we are delivering what we believe to be more than energy. You certainly know us for the electricity side of the equation, but there's so much more we're doing right here in the District of Columbia that I think it's important for you to understand. You know, as a corporate citizen here in DC, we understand that our role and our commitment to the communities we serve is much more than the electricity. And hopefully what you'll experience through that as we move forward is that come to life. And I have a few examples of some very specific things we're doing here in the District of Columbia to share with you. Also want to note that the district has been really, in my opinion, the platform upon which we've been able to really build similar practices in the other Pepco Holdings jurisdictions. So if we go to the next slide, please. All right, so a couple things. And Tyler mentioned our work with some of our local partners and communities. And so when we met last year to present our work, we didn't have what we now have, which is a new organization called the Corporate Community Impact Organization. We established this group towards the end of last year. What this group does is it essentially brings together our corporate social responsibility organization, our economic development arm, and our community engagement groups more directly, and then we tie it into our workforce development teams. And I want to showcase a little bit as to how this organization really works and how it benefits, I think, more directly the District of Columbia. So when you think about the utility and you think about Pepco, Pepco is over 125 years old here in the district. We consider ourselves to be an anchor institution. We've been here for a long time. And so what this work does is it attempts, to leverage other anchor institutions within what we call a place-based approach. So what does that look like? So we determine ourselves as an anchor institution, and then we identify other anchor institutions within the place. And so our HBCUs, as an example, are anchor institutions. Some of our nonprofit and civic organizations are anchor institutions. And what we do is we partner with these anchor institutions to more directly support that place, that community. So what that looks like from an HBCU perspective is we committed towards the end of last year approximately $8 million to HBCUs and community colleges over the next 3 years for the Pepco Holdings family of companies. As you know, we've got two of those institutions right here in the nation's capital, UDC and Howard University, both of which will get approximately $2 million of that $8 million over the next 3 years. And what we've established is, in partnership with both institutions, multiple programs. So we have a program that's a Pepco Scholars Program where students will get $50,000, if they're in the program, $50,000 per year towards tuition. Now, with the cost of tuition nowadays, that we expect to really support those students. In addition to that, we've established what we call persistence grants. What we experienced in through discussions with these institutions was that beyond the tuition, I'll say, pressures that students face, there are other pressures within the ecosystem. And this played out very directly during the pandemic when we had to really move to virtual learning. A lot of the students didn't have access to technology. And so what we've created are these persistence grants that the schools, the institutions can use at their discretion to address student need. And so that's one other item. One thing that we're very excited about, and actually this came through our regulatory team, and we often hear that we can find talent specifically in the regulatory space. And so we're going to partner with Howard University, specifically the law school and other entities within the institution, to start to develop a co-curriculum essentially around regulatory programs. How cool would it be to have students graduating from Howard, from institutions where you've got minorities represented, that can enter straight into the workforce, straight into the utilities with regulatory background? So this is something we're working on, and the funding we discussed, that I described, the $8 million is meant to really support that. Tyler mentioned really briefly the UDC program we have. If I could just double click back really quickly on that. That actually came out of the engagement we had directly with Dr. Mason when he was at UDC. Tyler and I spent a day with our team on the UDC campus, actually multiple campuses. We met with the faculty and academia, and then we took them to our operations control center. Through that process, this program was formed, and we graduated 8 individuals from the first cohort. The next cohort begins actually next month. Very excited about that. We'll probably amplify that and share that in some of our other jurisdictions. So a lot of exciting work occurring with our HBCUs, which are anchor institutions. Our community colleges, we have similar programs that are being planned as well too. On the corporate social responsibility side of the equation, this is where we do our giving, and not just giving of Pepco's resources financially, but also time. Our employees volunteer a tremendous amount of time. We are really focused on those anchor institutions. So if I can draw your attention to one of those east of the river. So if you've ever heard of the Building Bridges Across the River organization, or the ARC, it really is a catalyst for multiple nonprofits here in the District of Columbia. The Boys and Girls Club has a tremendous presence there. Exelon essentially donated $5 million to a project that we will break ground on in the next couple of weeks here, which will be the 11th Street Bridge Park project, if you've heard of it. This project is meant to connect east of the river with the Capitol Hill. As you all know, as Washingtonians, they can sometimes feel like there's a divide here. And we're literally building a physical bridge to bring communities together. There was a $5 million seed investment that Exelon made. And as a result of that, other companies jumped into the equation as well too. I sit on the board there on Mississippi Avenue. We also have a Skyline Workforce Development Academy right there on campus, working, supporting residents in that particular ward. And we continue to really amplify that work. We held a CCI, Corporate Community Impact Meet and Greet event in March, and invited all the civic leaders in DC to attend to give us feedback. And candidly speaking, some of the feedback was hard to hear in certain occasions because, you know, people tell you where things may not be working well as well, which we encourage. So George Lambert of the Greater Urban League provided us some really candid feedback around how we communicate to our stakeholders and maybe how we should take in more inputs while shaping that communication. That makes us better in terms of our program. So that was a great event. But beyond the event, really how we take what we heard and learned in that and then translate it into meaningful actions for the community. And then also, anyone who knows me knows I'm a huge soccer fan. I love the beautiful sport. We've established a partnership with DC United, but more specifically, DC Scores, if you're familiar with DC Scores, and a really, really neat program with the Raymond Elementary School, really exposing the students there to STEM and just the utility industry. But we use soccer as the hook to get them into the space. We hosted a World Cup watch party with what was probably 60 students at the Edison Place Gallery Place, and that led to a very robust partnership with the school as well too. So finally, economic development. We know economic vitality here in the District of Columbia is important. The pandemic has had an impact and continues to have an impact. And so we just established a new office at Pepco, Pepco Holdings Economic Development Office. We've hired a gentleman by the name of Mark Scorano, very well known in the DMV area. He's done a lot of work in Northern Virginia, that falls Dulles Toll Road corridor. A lot of the economic development you see there, he was really responsible for. He's building out our economic development office, and we'll be working with the mayor's Office of Economic Development and Planning as well to really determine how we can specifically focus and hone in our efforts here in the District of Columbia. So a lot of work across multiple dimensions. I just wanted to give you a snapshots into some of the items we're actively engaged in before I transition to Valencia. And I know some of you have had an opportunity to meet Valencia in informal settings, but I thought it was important that we're before this commission to formally introduce Valencia to you. So Valencia, who has returned to the Exelon family after 13 years. She's had tremendous history with us, left the company, but returned back to us, is our Vice President of Governmental and External Affairs and our Regional President for Pepco. In that capacity, she's got responsibility for all our external facing functions for the most part on the government affairs side. And so I wanted to just welcome Valencia and to introduce her to you. So Valencia.
All right, thank you, Rodney. Good afternoon to Chairman Thompson, Commissioner Beverly, and also Commissioner Trabue. As Rodney mentioned, I am Valencia McClure. I'm the new president at Pepco Region, 4 months into the job. Most recently, I was the Vice President of Governmental and External Affairs at BGE in Maryland. So it's great to be here in DC and be before you today. A lot of what I'm going to say, you may have heard a little bit between Tyler's presentation and also Rodney's, but I'll dive a little deeper into some of the conversation that's already taken place. One of the common themes that we've talked about today is equity. And so when we talk about equity, that's equity with our customer reliability, also our workforce supplier diversity, and our workforce development programs. And that's what I'll touch on this afternoon. So one of the great data points that I want to talk about, Tyler mentioned a little earlier, and I want to dive into it, is in 2022, Pepco spent $322 million with our diverse suppliers, representing 43% of our total spend. This was the highest in Pepco's 125-year history. Currently, Pepco has spent, through May of 2023, we have spent $152 million, representing 42% of our total spend. So we are on track this year to match or exceed what we did last year. Earlier this year, we hosted, because this is one of our top priorities for our company, so not only is it important for what we do with our minority suppliers and how we work with them, but also how our general contractors also encourage and promote working with diverse suppliers. So earlier this year, we hosted what we called a supplier summit, where we brought together our general contractors and also our minority diverse suppliers to encourage partnerships and to allow them to be able to meet some of the suppliers within that diverse space. So as they are looking to also reach out and increase their diverse spend, they have what we consider our approved contractors of choice. And so it makes it easier for them to encourage that participation and to continue to raise those numbers. In 2022, just within the DC area, Pepco spent more than $60 million with African-American owned businesses. And once again, we are on track this year to match or exceed that number. Next slide, please. Oh, and actually you can go one more slide. Okay, perfect. So as we talk about our strong operational performance, and this was touched on a little bit earlier, but one of the things obviously that Pepco is committed to doing is maintaining our strong operational performance. This commitment drives everything that Pepco does within our strategic framework to enhance grid performance and to deliver superior customer service. Strong operational performance means making the necessary investments and improvements to our infrastructure. And this is done with our capital grid project and also DC plug that we've talked about several times prior to today, that all help us to build a smarter, stronger, and cleaner energy grid. In 2022, Pepco experienced the lowest frequency of customer outages ever in the district, as previously mentioned by our CEO. Through an industry survey, which reports on reliability for over 70 million customers, Pepco ranked in the first quartile for safety and SAIDI. Over the last 10 years, ongoing investments in the local energy grid have driven a 57% decrease in the frequency of electric outages that Pepco customers have experienced. And Pepco will continue to invest in our grid to make sure that customers can expect to receive safe and reliable service. Next slide, please. So we have the benefit of being in the district, which the district really has been a long leader when it comes to addressing climate change. The district has one of the most, I would say, bold and aggressive clean energy amendments that is out there. Pepco is a key partner with the Council of the District of Columbia and all of the mayor's agencies in ensuring that we stand as a leader in helping the district to meet their clean energy goals. Pepco has made several recent filings before the commission that are responsive to the commission's oversight in this important area and reflective of Pepco's commitment to addressing the climate crises and building resiliency. Most recently, we have filed a 5-year action plan and the 30-year transition strategy as part of the broader climate solutions plan. The climate solution plan builds upon Pepco's 2020 climate commitment, in which the company committed to reducing its own greenhouse gas emission footprint by 70% by the end of 2025 and achieve net zero emissions by 2050 and help our customers and communities to do the same. In December of 2022, Pepco submitted a request before the commission for approval to move forward with a subset of programs from the company's Climate Solution 5-year action plan. The Climate Solutions Plan Phase 1 includes 11 programs supporting 3 key areas, and that's our transportation electrification and building decarbonization as part of those programs. If approved, the programs are designed to increase the number and availability of electric vehicle charging stations throughout the district, including incentivizing more than 2,100 new charging points and to upgrade electric systems to enable electrification, among other specific benefits, including support for the installation behind the meter batteries. One of the things too that was important to us as we looked when it comes to our EV is to ensure that we're following the Justice 40. So when we look to see best practices among the states across the US, and we designed our program, which was similar to what we launched in Maryland, 40% of the incentives are targeted to our underserved communities. And so that is something, again, when we talk about equity as being one of our overarching goals, we wanted to make sure we were following along that same process when it comes to building out our EV program. Next slide, please. So on this, I want to talk, we talked a little bit about our diverse minority supplier and our spend that was $352 million. So, and Tyler talked about this, but one of our programs that was actually launched through Exelon, but has further reach into all the utilities within the Exelon family is our Racial Equity Capital Fund. And we are so excited that this Friday, we will conduct a press announcement on Friday where we will announce $2.7 million that is going to 3 local businesses within the district and 1 in Maryland. This is a significant investment into the businesses that will help them to scale up their business, to be able to hire employees. And also one of the requirements is that they give back to the communities that they serve. So more to come on that as the announcement is made on Friday. But it is something that will continue. This is the first of our announcement for businesses that are in the district, but this is an ongoing program that we're very, very excited about to introduce to the community. The company that we work with, which is Rock Creek, that actually administers the fund on our behalf, is also a woman-owned, minority-owned business. So we're excited to be able to partner with Rock Creek in this very, very important initiative on behalf of the company. So as we talk about our workforce development and equity within workforce development, we do that in a number of ways. So we make sure that we partner with our high schools to be able to introduce them to STEM, so they're aware of the opportunities that exist within the energy industry. We also partner, of course, with our universities that you heard Rodney talk about earlier. And then our community colleges, which is very important to us as well. And then on the infrastructure academy side. So we touch it in 4 different areas. One part on our HBCUs that Rodney mentioned, of course, is our $7.3 million commitment to our HBCUs, and those 2 being here in our area, Howard University, and of course, University of the District of Columbia. And I won't restate some of the programs that he already talked about, but of course, the Power Scholars, we have, in addition to one that we're very excited about that he touched on, is this regulatory rate making course that members of our own regulatory team will be developing a course for students at Howard. And this has been an area that we hear about a lot, that our Black and Brown students don't have the opportunity to really have a career within the regulatory side. So this will start to change the landscape to where students now, while they're in college, will have the opportunity to learn about rate making, regulatory opportunities, and within the finance opportunities. So that helps to level them up as they graduate and to increase opportunities for them within the utility and the energy industry. In addition to that, we also at the University of District of Columbia, we have our Power Lab, which is an alternate energy laboratory that educates students on the whole renewable energy landscape and what jobs exist in that space. When it comes to the high school sector, we have a number of programs where we have STEM opportunities to be able to have our employees go out to the schools and to educate high school students on STEM and the opportunities that exist within our business. Community college side, we've invested $1.4 million with our community colleges. Of course, that is the DC Community College that is here. We have instituted a infrastructure program at the community college to be able to offer HVAC programs, EV programs, again, to teach the students, to be able to equip them to be able to have opportunities within our company. We've also created a system opportunity boot camp at UDC as well. Next slide. So, and Tyler touched on this, one of the programs that we tend to talk about, not only in DC, but we actually talk about it across all of our utilities, and that is our partnership with DCIA, which is the DC Infrastructure Academy, a 14-week paid utility training program that's offered to DC residents to create a pathway to middle class. And when we say middle class, these are jobs that they're being trained for that actually offers what we call really life-changing opportunities for the salaries that they would be applying for. And it starts to create that generational wealth for individuals. So following their 14-week paid utility training program, and over 235 participants that have graduated, 100% of those graduates have received full-time jobs with either Pepco or the suppliers that we work with, which is amazing. I'm not sure, I can't say definite, but I'm not sure if there's any other program that exists in the United States that can say 100% of the graduates have received full-time jobs. So this is something that we're excited about. As we continue to work with DCIA, they actually have just built out a new space, which will allow us to have even more individuals to go through this Infrastructure Academy program. So before I turn it back over to Tyler to give our closing remarks, I'd like to show you a brief video that gives you just a little bit of an indication of the pride that graduates feel as they go through the DCIA program. Thank you.
Yeah, we'll close there and just again, thank you.
Mhm.
Maybe I'm stereo. Just want to say thank you again. We'll conclude there.
Thank you, and thank you to all of you for coming today. You know, often we don't have a chance to speak and communicate directly, perhaps through orders, but the opportunity for us to speak directly and ask questions of you are very seldom. So I certainly take this time and appreciate this time to speak to you directly. Certainly want to applaud Pepco, PHI, and the parent company, Exelon, for all the work they do in the DE&I space. I think it's without question that you guys are leaders in town and doing some of the work here. You know, you guys talked about the money you spend around supplier diversity. As you guys know, we had the hearing. We certainly worked through those numbers, and they're very, very impressive. And so we appreciate your commitment to that. Also with DC, excuse me, sorry, the DC Infrastructure Academy, I had the opportunity to go down and visit myself, and I met Miss Pinto, who was a primary narrator in the video, and the work that's going on there is also phenomenal. So thank you for your work in the community. One of the questions I did have, and this is getting a little specific, but it was mentioned several times throughout the presentation, was Pepco's commitment to the district's clean energy goals and how you guys are doing what you can to enable the clean energy future, specifically around advancing solar. And so one of my questions that I have is specifically around the Green Connect team. You know, you mentioned the rise in applications across the PHI footprint, almost 12,000 residential rooftop applications this year. What are you guys doing to facilitate not only that interconnection process, but facilitate it in a timely manner so that people are able to access and connect to the grid and to hasten that clean energy transition?
Yeah, thank you for the question, Chairman. You know, the interconnection, it's almost become its own entity because it's just exploded. And I would say in the past 2 years, we've come a long way from how to handle those applications. And I think to your question on focus, I would say we have 3 focuses on interconnection, 3 focus areas, and you mentioned them. One is transparency. You have to be transparent with the customer about what we know and give them updates, transparency through the whole process. 2, you mentioned this as well, timely. These customers are looking for timely responses. We're that first contact to the customer, et cetera. And then 3, low cost. We're looking for low cost interconnection, low cost on our side. So those are our 3 focus areas that I would say we're judging our success on. And I would say, in my opinion, when we started 2 years ago, this type of volume, you know, we stumbled a little bit trying to get ourselves settled. And one of the things that we've done that I think is having a big impact is, in addition to those 3 focus areas, we started with these relationship managers for all the large solar providers. So what we have now is a large solar provider in the district has one-stop shop to talk to somebody about the integration of their projects that they can go to on a routine basis. And in some cases, we're talking to some of them solar providers on a weekly and some even on a daily basis to make sure that their projects are happening. So it's an important focus area, Mr. Chairman, and we're continuing to do better.
When you mention these relationship managers, are they focused? I want to try and make a distinction here. Are they focused? You know, you said that they're tied to one provider. Is this like one developer who's developing for themselves, or is this a developer who is developing? Oh, thank you.
Yeah, I
for
can give you
residential
the exact
customers?
statistics, but let's say there's like, say, 6 or 8 developers that carry like maybe 80% of the weight. So our thought was make sure on those bigger providers that are doing X amount of in the district, let's make sure they have a spot that we can keep them moving.
Okay.
We see ourselves as a much needed. We need to, you know, be very close partners with them because some of the installations get complex. Sometimes we're changing sizes depending on where we're trying to put it. And it needs to be more of a relationship versus transactional.
Thank you. I'm going to let my other commissioners ask questions. I may come back. Thank you.
I just have a comment initially, and you basically answered the question. That's why it's a comment. You had mentioned Pepco's improvement in reliability, and reliability was a particular issue of mine, especially neighborhood reliability. I had met with you and your team on a number of occasions, and I think it went from, I'll call it a choppy start to what I thought were excellent presentations about your plans for moving forward. And it looks to me like you've done what you said you would do. I can't say that I've heard anybody bragging about Pepco at a barbecue, but I haven't heard anybody complaining about them either. So
We'll take that.
that's good enough.
Yeah.
My other question here is with regard to interconnection. Now, according to the interconnection queue, it's taken an average of 200 days to interconnect. And maybe you have a different number, but that's the number that I saw.
Mm.
Do you consider that to be on par with what's happening in other areas across the country?
If
You need improvement?
I have to validate the number, exactly what piece that is. It sounds that I'll have to validate. I'll just say that. And absolutely not acceptable. 200 days is absolutely not acceptable. I would say some of our, I don't want to say the term easier. I don't know if we're pointing to some of the more advanced or larger installations versus the standard residential install where you can do the engineering analysis quickly. Some of the more advanced ones require relay schemes. They require in-field work, design changes at the substations. That might be some of the ones that you're referring to. But I think the bottom line is to your question is that it has to be a focus area. We can't take 200 days or we're going to slow down the district's goals around carbon reduction. And I would say it's something that we spend a lot of time on this. We talk about the CREF meters and the lessons learned, had mentioned that up front. You guys mentioned that up front about we're spending a lot of time outside of here in our meeting rooms. What did we learn? How did we get here? How could we be better, et cetera? And the interconnection is a significant focus area for us. I'll have to validate the 200 days, but clearly not acceptable if in the examples you're pointing to.
If you can validate it,
Mhm.
and I'd like to get a better idea, not on the spot.
Yeah,
But
I'd love to
better
follow up with you.
Yeah,
Mhm.
I need a better idea of if that is a problem, what's creating it?
Okay.
So is this Pepco creating the problem? Is it the district government in certification of applications on their end of it the problem? What is causing this delay? It may be something on both sides. I don't know.
Yeah.
But to the extent that this commission can do something to make sure that this process goes faster than that, that's what I'd like to do. I see this similar to what you and I had talked about with regard to neighborhood reliability. None of this is simple. It may be simple to identify the problem. The solution isn't always that simple
See,
and not quick.
I talked about us becoming a technology company that delivers electricity, and you take the Solar for All program as an example where we have, over 6,000-ish customers on the Solar for All program. So now you're on circuit 1, 2, 3. You're trying to give them a bill credit from energy that's coming on circuit 4, 5, 6. That individual moves in the middle of the month. Like from billing standpoint, just to be totally transparent, we struggle trying to figure all these management systems in place to make that work well. I frankly think it's one of the best programs when it comes to affordability. Community solar, I don't think anybody does it better than the District of Columbia. Now, with that said, to your point, we got to do our part to figure all of that. Come and follow up with you on a full review of interconnection.
I appreciate that. Thank you.
Mhm. Thank you for the question.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And it's a pleasure to see you, Mr. Anthony, and your colleagues as well. Let me congratulate you on many of the matters that you reported on earlier this afternoon. Very, very impressive statistics about your commitment to and investments in the District of Columbia. I was very happy to see many of the things that were reported this afternoon. I have 3 or 4 questions that I'd like to put in front of you. As the chairman said, it's great to have an opportunity to speak directly with you and have you here in these kinds of conversations. The first question is more around what I would call a large customer question. Understanding that you are here in the District of Columbia, and the federal government seated here as well is probably one of your larger customers. The federal government, there are conversations about it might shut down at the end of this fiscal year, which is basically the end of the week. How does a shutdown like that, how might a shutdown like that with one of your largest customers impact, or does it not impact your operations and how you work here in the city?
That's a good question. I'd have to give it some thought. I
Okay.
want to say impact, yes, in different ways. It would show up in different ways, whether it's the usage or what would happen as different facilities or people aren't there. From a services standpoint, I would think there would be interruptions to us from the regard of if we have, as an example, maybe I should start there. As an example, with the federal government, we recently signed an memorandum of understanding.
Mhm.
It kind of goes back to, what we're trying to do is when we make a commitment to the commission, follow through on that commitment and execute well. So we build a level of trust. Now, to the federal government, I had been introduced to the GSA administrator, Carnahan,
Mhm.
and she had mentioned to me about the federal government's sustainability goals. And she opened the door for us to come and talk to them. We took the full team, full court press, went over to the GSA building and started having conversations of how we could help. Now, they have sustainability goals, building electrification,
Mhm.
EVs, sustainabilities. And I'd like to think we influence them because the fourth area is all about equity.
Yeah.
And I'd like to think we help them bring that to the forefront of their planning.
Mhm.
Now, to your question about the shutdown, I know we were planning to do the Reagan building is one of the first ones for electrification that they're targeting. And we're looking at how we can help them. In fact, I think we're having weekly calls with them right now. But in any regards, I think from a shutdown standpoint, I think there will be impact to us. It might be minor, but I do think as longer it would go, the more it would show up, whether it's in our usage and what we're doing with them on some of these different projects that we're working on. I think it would have an impact.
Right now, and maybe stay within this MOU that you have with the federal government and the work that you're doing in various federal facilities. There are other energy efficiency programs in the District of Columbia right now that are also probably serving many of the similar facilities that you are discussing, right? That we're discussing right now. Are any of the programs that you are working with, I know you talked about building the electrification as one of them, but are any of them in the energy efficiency space, or is it, because clearly electrification and energy efficiency are two very different things. Electrification being more fuel switching, energy efficiency being reducing the consumption of a fuel.
That's correct.
Are there three-party conversations or making sure you're not tripping over each other or that we're duplicating efforts here?
I think that's a good question for us. I think we're early in the process. I think we'll develop there, but I would say we're early in the process with them, but I think it's a good challenge to us to make sure we're looking at the efficiency. And when I talked about the 4 areas of affordability, clearly those are 2 of the areas. How can consumers be more aware, more informed about their usage?
Yeah.
And that applies obviously to the federal government and what they're trying to do with as they electrify a lot of their buildings. So I think it's a good challenge to us. I'd say it's early is what I would say.
Okay.
No, sorry, yeah, let me just stand up just. No, great question. I think it's and so they all work in concert to meet the goals.
Mhm.
I think what we're doing now is trying to pull it all apart to fully understand how the pieces fit together. And so if you think about the district's climate goals, we're going to attain the goals through multiple avenues, right? Electrification is one for fleet. Building electrification is another. Decarbonization is a component. So it's really understanding all the pieces and how the pieces fit together. And our MOU with the GSA is meant to really understand that profile.
All right.
And it kind of goes along with Commissioner Beverly's challenge, like federal buildings, there's a lot. So we feel like if we can get to a partner, we don't want to be the slow decider. What is the roadblocks that we can work out now as more of a partner versus reacting to the outcome?
Okay.
Good question though.
All right. Let me see if I can ask another question that you'll think is a good question. So when the pandemic broke out in March of 2020, roughly 3.5 years ago, for a variety of reasons, customers probably fell behind on their bills. Some may have lost employment. There were, other factors as well, moratorium on disconnections, and sometimes that sparks behavior. Are you finding 3.5 years later that you feel your customers are catching up with their bills?
I don't want to say this is a good question. It is a good question.
If you don't want to talk about it, that's fine.
No,
Let me
of course
ask
not.
let me
No,
ask it a
the
different
reason I pause.
Let me ask it a different way.
Is because if there's items that keep you up at night, people that are struggling to pay their bill in our current economy with the current situation with inflation, it weighs heavy on us. And weighs heavy on us in a way where we'll have deep discussions on, okay, are people getting the necessary support? Do they know where to go? We'll even help people through the application process. We're doing
because that's part B of my question. Did you find during the pandemic that people took advantage of some of the programs that were offered?
Yes. I want to say yes, they have, but there's different reasons. Sometimes people don't apply. Like it could even be something like pride. So I think the answer is yes, many have. And then you talked about the balances. We have some customers that have built up some significant balances since the pandemic, and some are still struggling with that. So I would say we're not fully recovered. And I think people are still feeling the effects post-COVID for the reasons that you stated. And I think we have to continue to work with our customers to help them get back, to where they need and get the necessary help they need.
Okay. So part C to my question, and I don't want to dwell on this forever, but this will be the last part of it. I promise there won't be a part D. A report that your company filed recently, I hope I maybe I misread the report. Let me see if this. You have about 300,000 residential customers in the District of Columbia. Okay. And of that number, over 88,000 of them were in arrears. If I'm reading the report right. Now, that's not low income customers. That's just residential customers in the city. I'm not a math major, but that's about a third of your customers. And please don't feel compelled to answer this question today. If you need to go back, and I think it's fair to go back and take a look and do some research, we would love to hear from you on a follow-up. Is that standard around the country? Are we an outlier? Are we better than most? But I just think that a third of the customer base being in arrears is just personal. It's I think it's a large number.
Yes.
But again, but this might be the norm in the country. I don't know.
See, and you have to think about, we're talking norm post-COVID, and we're talking norm prior to COVID, but I definitely will accept the follow-up with you, and we'll come and we'll go through the numbers pretty deep with you, and then we'll do some comparatives across the country and give you some numbers for sure.
Okay. If I could add a dynamic, I think we need to kind of verify and follow up with you more concretely on what you asked. To your question around the impacts of the pandemic, what I can say we've seen from a Pepco Holdings perspective is that the limited income population is clearly defined for the most part in the nation, right? It's a certain percentage of the federal poverty line, and then there are programs with LIHEAP for that population. That population did relatively soundly during the pandemic because there are programs that are already in place for them. There's a group just above that population. The United Way calls it the ALICE population. There's a really interesting report. We'll make it available to the commission. ALICE stands for Asset Limited, Income Constrained, but Employed. These are households that are not technically limited income and don't qualify for the programs that LIHEAP and the like, but are one paycheck away from disaster. What we're seeing from the pandemic is that ALICE population got significantly behind during the pandemic and are struggling to get back. And so we need to really follow up on that, but this is common knowledge. The report speaks to it, that Alice population is what I believe has been tremendously squeezed by the pandemic and just never made it back to where they were before the pandemic. But we'll get you more details specifically for Pepco to your question.
Okay. Thank you. And my final question, on a completely different note, is I like the forward thinking in terms of your companies trying to prepare for the transition, particularly around electric vehicles. Again, not a question for today per se, but down the road, you are clearly working in multiple states and probably have, I think you mentioned best practices from the wingspan of your company, and I'm sure you're looking outside of that as well. If there are some suggestions that you might offer to this commission about, we of course in the district are looking at legislation that is pending in the council about the deployment of more EV charging stations here in the District of Columbia, and want to understand how we can best facilitate that work here in the city. And so if you have any thoughts around it, we would be happy to hear it.
We'll definitely follow up on it with you. And then the first, what's interesting is, we get appropriately challenged on the distribution system planning process. 10 years ago, I could tell you, oh, residential home builds, this is happening in this area. We will likely need a substation in 12 years if this growth continues. And it was pretty linear, and the engineers were pretty good at figuring that out. Today, it's EVs. What block is everyone going to buy their first car on? Because I could maybe go after that circuit first. Okay, what's going to happen? Is everyone going to plug in at 6 o'clock on an August hot day? Or will we have a structure working together that drives customer behavior to say, charge that at 11 o'clock at night versus 6 o'clock on a 95-degree August day?
Yeah.
So those are the challenges we come up where we need innovation. And I will say, if we can work together, whether it's the rooftop solar, that battery that's going to be on the wall in the garage, or the EV, we work together and we integrate those resources together with technology, I believe we don't have to build the next substation. But we'll definitely follow up with you.
Thank you very much.
I didn't initially have any other questions, but Mr. Anthony, you brought up something that I think has kind of piqued my interest. We talked about distribution system planning. And as you know, a number of years ago, we had the Power Path proceeding where we looked at a number of things, one of which was around the area of distribution system planning. Do you think it's time for there to be another distribution planning process here in DC to look at some of these things and look at the grid as we move towards the future and try and make it?
I don't think we need a new process, but I think the process today, because it's so dynamic, we need to talk and communicate much more about what assumptions we're making in that planning process. Because the process really comes down to the assumptions we make. What is going to be the EV penetration in the District of Columbia in the next 5 years? What do we see as building electrification in the next 5 years? And we're working on that. So my first reaction, although we can talk about it, is planning process is pretty good right now, with the exception things have changed and they're dynamic, and our communication needs to be probably much more frequent in that regard. I'd love to take a follow-up on that one too, if you feel appropriate, Chairman.
Okay, thank you.
I think I'm walking out of here with a bunch of work to do.
I just have a follow-up question with regard to the EVs. Does the District of Columbia's housing setup pose a different kind of a challenge for meeting these? And I'll just use this as a for instance. My brother lives in Bowie, Maryland. He has a separate house, not a townhouse, and he has a garage. I live in DC in a townhouse with no garage. I have an EV. I don't have any place to really set up a charger.
Yeah.
You can't put it on the sidewalk.
Yeah.
I can't, to run wire back to where I park the car is probably like $150 50 feet or something.
Yeah.
And so that is $500 or $600 worth of wire, just the wire. So I'm saying with the challenges that people face in the district may be a little different than somewhere else. And I don't know how that's being factored in. So you can throw all the rain can fall at once to high up above, but a lot of it won't hit the ground.
Yeah, it's a big challenge. It's a big challenge. You know, and my reaction to that is I say together we start, what's the first thing that makes a lot of sense? Transportation, the buses. Let's figure out how to do that smartly. You know, we just in Montgomery County, there was a microgrid that was completed there that's running 70 buses right now, 70 electric buses in Brookfield that, if my memory's right, about 80% of what it takes to run those buses, they're self-generating between the batteries and the solar. So some interesting dynamics. Once again, if we're planful. But the example you talked about, why did I think you had a motorcycle? Maybe I was wrong.
I have them all.
I'm just
Motorcycle,
you know,
scooter.
and I'll close with this, and I'll take any final questions. Is, you know, it's an honor to be the CEO of Pepco. You see my team here today. I can't convey enough the commitment we have to work with this commission and to better the lives of the men and women in the District of Columbia for even and the challenges we have in front of us. I hope that in the last 7 years that I've been here, we're trying to build a level of trust in following through on what we say. And you have my commitment, whether it's the EVs, what we're trying to do with for helping folks pay their bills, the different comments, questions, distribution system planning process. I think together and working with your staff, frankly, I don't think there's nothing we can't handle. And I'd love to keep DC in the forefront. I'll close with, I firmly believe, positions that I have, if I could be so bold, positions that you have, positions of authority are a gift we're given to make it better for the people that work for us. I'll stop there.
Thank you, Mr. Anthony, and thank you, Pepco, for your presence here today. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
Let me thank the entirety of the team as well very much for your time this afternoon and the very, very informative presentation. Thank you.
Thank you. And this meeting is adjourned. Thank you.